Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I'm with James Pittman today. You might have heard that name before because he's a co-founder of Docketwise. Many of you are using that software, and I got to know James recently. We did a panel through Docketwise about attorney marketing, and I thought it'd be really interesting for our colleagues to get to know you because you were an immigration attorney and you kind of made a shift to the tech background that's related to immigration, which is sort of kind of what I do, immigration attorney, go into podcasting and education, stuff like that. So, there's different ways of being an immigration lawyer, what you could do with it. So I thought it'd be excellent to have you here to show life after immigration law or in tandem, other options that are possible. So we're going to dig in deep into your background, but thank you for coming on.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here, John. I really appreciate it. Sure. So, I went to law school at Northeastern University Law School, and I graduated there 1999 and got admitted to the bar in New Jersey and New York. I also got admitted to the patent bar, and before I was in immigration law, I was in intellectual property. So I do have, I have background in science going way back. And I actually worked in the intellectual property area first for a couple of firms, and then eventually decided to make a shift. Just do a field of law that I was more inherently passionate about, which was immigration. And that probably goes back to some of my own personal background. I mean, my grandparents on my mother's side were immigrants here. They came from Italy at the turn of the 20th century. And I'm the kind of person who just enjoys dealing with people from other parts of the world. I'm just a person that really enjoys the international sort of milieu. And I, traveled abroad a lot, have, studied abroad in different countries. So it was a good fit. And my concern with, civics and my desire to help people sort of get assimilated to the U.S. society, those all made it a good fit. So I always felt that it was a field that I belonged in. And I decided to make the transition and basically took, the skills that I had acquired by being an IP lawyer in terms of how to operate as a lawyer, and just sort of made a transition. And I had it, I learned the substantive immigration law. I went to conferences. I volunteered on the border. I worked with an organization called ProBar. It's actually still in existence. It's actually a lot bigger than it ever was now. It's a project of the Texas Bar Association. And went down and worked on the border, taking cases pro bono in the immigration courts in Harlingen and at Port Isabel Detention Center and in Brownsville, and learned the field, learned the immigration field, and sort of went on my own solo. And I did that for a number of years. I had a very diverse practice. I had, I would say, I was really doing everything. I had some business immigration. I had some companies dealt especially with physicians, with people in the IT field, a lot of software people coming from India, from China, dealt with doctors, many doctors from Pakistan, from other places coming to the U.S. So I did some of the business immigration. I had a large family-based immigration practice going to. That was kind of an essential aspect of it. And then I did some asylum and removal, really. People came in, they would come in and they had an asylum claim, and, I handled those types of cases. I liked those, even though those are labor intensive and you get into a lot of, sort of frustrating challenges with them. But I really liked dealing with those because you could really dig into the country conditions. That was the aspect of it. The humanitarian aspect and the aspect of digging into the country conditions, because I'm a person that really likes reading about what's going on politically in different countries, that really likes reading about conflict in different countries and how conflict gets resolved and the problems of refugees. Those are things that are inherently interesting to me. So I enjoyed, doing those asylum cases and really getting to help people that way as well. And I did that for a number of years. I ran the practice that way until around 2000. It was around 2015, I guess. Yeah, about 2014, 2015. I had a client who came with a very straightforward marriage-based immigration case coming from Canada, and we handled his green card. He got his conditional green card. It was pretty straightforward. And then after the case was over, he came back to me and approached me and said, hey, I'm, as you know, I'm a tech entrepreneur, and I want to start a new company, and I want to start it around immigration. and I'd really like it if you'd consider being part of it with me. And I thought, well, this is amazing. This is just an incredible idea. And I thought it over, and I thought, well, this is an opportunity to really take my domain expertise, my substantive immigration law, and just really use it in a new way that really touches the entire field, where I can make an impact on the field as a whole. And this is an amazing transition, and I have a little bit of a background in technology, with my science background. So this was a good fit. So I agreed to it, and the person that invited me was our CEO, Jeremy Peskin, and that is really how Docketwise began. And from then we've just been very fortunate. It's been really successful from the beginning. I think it's a question of having just a fantastic user experience, a very enjoyable site to use, and great customer service, and we've been successful. But that is my background, in a nutshell, basically.
Did you study poli-sci in college, or you have a science background? Assume as a
I didn't. I took a lot of poli-sci courses. My undergraduate major, I double majored in psychology and chemistry. Mm-hmm. And then I was sort of figuring out what to do with that. I wasn't really sure what exactly I wanted to do with it. I stuck in. I just hung out for another year and did a master's. I have a master's in chemistry as well. And then I decided that I would go to law school. And I just from researching what opportunities were available with that kind of a background, there was at the time a great need for patent lawyers, people who could draft patent applications. It's a very, very specialized, specific subfield of law. There is a separate bar exam for that. It is not easy to pass that. You have to have a certain amount of science coursework done. You have to have a degree in science, or at least a certain number of courses. And that's the direction I set out to go in. I sort of knew that was where I was going to go first in law. And I did that, and I succeeded at doing that. I passed the patent bar, I passed the state bar. I got into patent law firms. I worked in a couple of different boutique firms in Boston and in North Jersey and here in Philadelphia. And that was, but my background was psychology and chemistry, and always was very interested in political science and history as well. I'm just a history buff and a languages buff. And I took any chance I had to study abroad, I took it. I studied in China when I was in high school. I was among one of the first Americans to really go with an exchange program in China, in Greece when I was in law school, and then later in Turkey. So, studied at Bosphorus University in Istanbul as well.
I studied poli-sci, and I really enjoy psychology now. And I think poli-sci is a reflection of the psychology of the individuals of that country. So their government structure, how history works, it's like a reflection of the attitudes of the people there. So it really you learn a lot about people, and immigration is just so wonderful about that. So you're reading biographies every day, every time you have a client walk in. So how hard was it to go the transfer? So are you full-time with Docketwise now, or do you practice as well on the side?
No, I'm full. Yes, I'm full-time with Docketwise. That's my 100% commitment. I don't practice anymore. So yeah, I have wound down my practice, and I'm not in practice anymore. And my time is taken up with the affairs of Docketwise, with our public outreach, with our public presence, with customer support, with sales to customers and ongoing support, and other internal things that we have to do to maintain the platform.
Now, kind of two questions. One is about the platform, how it started itself, and then the internal size and scope of the company. But when you make a decision to make a forms program, did you first start just thinking about a marriage adjustment, or did you go all in and say, okay, we get all the forms? There's a lot going on there. How did you start Docketwise? The initial steps of it that you wanted to create?
Well, the first thing we tackled was the family-based immigration, because that's the most common type of case that people come in with, however you slice it. And it was a good prototype because, number one, it would be the first thing that we could debut, but it's also one where there was a lot of internal logic that had to be thought through and planned. So we actually had to sit down and sort of go through and develop specifications for how the program would determine what forms it was going to compile, because our initial desire was to enable the forms to be selected from the user's choice of questions. This was our initial. So based on your answers in the questionnaire, Docketwise was then going to choose what forms you needed for the case. So we did that with the family-based immigration, and that is a feature of Docketwise to the present day. If you use our Family Green Card Smart Form, based on whether you indicate that the applicant is doing adjustment of status or consular processing, or whether you need a joint sponsor or don't need one, the Family Green Card Smart Form in Docketwise will determine what forms you need, and we'll put them together into a packet for you. So that was what we had to do, and that was a very complicated task, because especially around the affidavit of support, around figuring out the algorithms for how the product was going to decide, or how the logic was going to work, where you could take the user inputs and then decide, for example, does the petitioner's income meet the poverty guideline threshold? If not, display the choices for how to solve that problem, then develop an input for the joint sponsor or for assets or whatever you're using, and then is it sufficient or not? So all of that logic had to be sat down and thought through and developed into specifications, which you could then give to web developers to actually turn into the product. And that was, for the Family Green Card Smart Form, I would say it was, I don't remember exactly how long, but it was several months. It may have been as much as 6 months of actually sitting in a room, developing these logic trees, these specifications that we went through.
Very interesting. I've worked with developers in the past. It's not easy to, they're in their world of what they do, and try to tell them, okay, this is immigration. A lot of it doesn't make any sense. There's 1,000,001 little things to it. Must have been a lot of work.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. And that's something I had to keep conveying to the team, is that immigration law, because of the way the regulations are written, there are just innumerable exceptions to things that can make a difference. So, and you're dealing with web developers who do not substantively know, what the forms are for or in what context they exist. So you have to sort of convey that. Mm-hmm. But fortunately we have, an excellent chief engineer. We have really two absolutely stellar software engineers who are at the top of the team, and they've both developed an understanding now of how these things work in context. Especially our one engineer who really does the mapping of the data, who has to sort of develop the logic for what question corresponds to what field on the forms and how that should get mapped and so forth. He's really begun to develop an understanding of what's involved in immigration law with some of these types of forms, just from having to continuously work on these forms for years.
I was watching this YouTube video about Pixar Entertainment and how they make these cartoons that are really intricate. And they have their designers and engineers, the people who create the video, they have them actually play out the scene. So there was one scene they were showing where this guy, for the film Ratatouille, the guy fell in a river. He had each one of the people fall back into the river, so they get the feeling for how a person falls, and when the air comes and when they get wet, how they feel and how they move their arms. So it's more realistic. And it's kind of like that. An engineer has to become an immigration attorney just to wrap their head around why you have all these forms that it's all over the place. How big is the team now? How many people do you have on board? And I'm sure you have part-time and let's call it independent contractors, all that too, probably.
We do. We have the two co-founders, Jeremy and myself, and then we have our customer service manager. And all three of us are here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And then we have our engineering team, which is in various locations, mm-hmm. working remotely. And we have our two of our top engineers, and then we have another engineer. So what is that? That's 6 there. And then we have quality testing, someone whose job is quality assurance testing, who just, when we develop a form, when we put a new questionnaire on, or when we update something, they have to go in and rigorously run tests on it, basically do mock cases to see that all the data is going to the right fields on the form. Okay. So that's quality assurance testing.
That's quite a job.
And it's quite a job. And I recruited a friend of mine who's an immigration attorney who was interested in doing that part-time to kind of take on that job. That's Lita, who has worked with us from time to time, Lita Godoy, who's an immigration attorney who has done quality assurance testing on the forms. And it's fortunate because she has a computer science background, which enables her to think in that sort of, step by step, if then, way that you need to do that. So she's good at that. And then we have someone who writes our newsletter, someone who's an immigration analyst whose job is every day to go and cull stories from the media about what's going on in immigration and, sort of distill that into a newsletter that goes out on a daily basis. And then we have, well, those are the main people. From time to time, someone else, but those are the main people.
How do you deal with the stress of, especially this administration, like overnight changing forms, the whole I-485, I-944 stuff? Like, how do you deal with that?
We went from a situation where forms had not changed, or forms used to change once every however many years, to a situation where forms are being changed continuously. We have a policy. We are able to update forms within 5 business days of when the government publishes or puts out, if you will, a new form. But when they sprung the public charge rule on us with changing that whole entire set of forms with those new public charge regulations, it was hectic. Frankly, it was hectic. People had to work extra hours. People had to work overtime and stay late and get up early and do things on the weekends, and it was hectic. And we tried to think, and the users, people would email us wanting to make sure that the new versions were going to be available immediately, which they were. For a while we maintained both versions of the forms. We maintained the old, because you don't forget. Let's just recap for a minute. They put out the public charge rule, and everybody thought that was going to go into effect on a certain date, and then it was enjoined by the courts. It was blocked. So we had the team in high gear updating all the forms, ready to update on a certain date, and then there was an injunction. So then we sort of didn't deploy the new versions because no one could use them. They weren't going to accept them, and we went back to the old versions. And then when that case eventually, when the new regulations were allowed to go into effect, then we had to deploy the new versions. But then there was the whole situation with Illinois being an exception, and there was still a federal district court injunction in Illinois, and so forth. So for a while, we had to have both versions on the site, because we do have a fair number of users in Illinois. There's just a lot of immigration lawyers in Chicago and other cities in that state. So we had to have both versions. And then finally, we were able to just have the new version. But it was very hectic, and it was stressful for us, the same way it's stressful for all practitioners. It was,
I mean, just before, like, you have to sit and study it first. And I'm still reading it in the instructions sometimes. I'm like, oh, it says you need 12 months of bank statements. I've been sending 1 month just as, oops. So it just, oh man, what a nightmare. Now, from your perspective, because you see a different angle of our field, and you deal with businesses on mass scale. What is the state, in your opinion, of immigration law practice, the business of immigration law? Is there any insight that you can provide from the angle that you get to see it?
No, I have, because we hear from our users. We hear from our users, and the pandemic has been, but the combination, it's been a double whammy, with the pandemic just closing everything and causing all kinds of difficulties, and with the Trump administration just doing everything to sort of block people from immigrating and making life difficult for immigrants and making life difficult for advocates. So I've thought about it a lot, every day practically. I mean, certain people are really hurting. I mean, certain groups of people have been very negatively affected by some of the administration's decisions. I'm actually going to be having a retired immigration judge. You may know his name, Charles Honeyman, who's going to be on our podcast, our webinar. We're going to have a webinar with him talking about sort of from his point of view. But from what I see from the practitioners, certain people are very adversely affected, and people are really trying to find technology solutions, especially with the COVID-19, so that their clients don't have to come in person to the office for everything. And that's traditionally been something which was easier to do, I think, with business immigration than with family immigration or asylum cases. Let's face it, if you're dealing with underserved or underprivileged communities or marginal communities, people are going to have less access to technology. We hear from a lot of practitioners that their clients don't have an email address, or they can't get their clients to cooperate with them over email and so on. We hear these types of things, and I know it too, because I had my share of clients that were like that wanted to come in person to drop off every piece of paper that you needed. And it's hard, very hard, and it's dangerous with COVID-19. So we do believe that a lot of the features that we're deploying have helped people to deal with that issue. I mean, we enable people to send invitations to questionnaires by text message. So even if a client doesn't have an email, everybody practically has a cell phone. They can open the questionnaire on their cell phone. We have all of the questionnaires available in Spanish, which really helps with the Spanish-speaking population. But some firms are hurting. Firms that were on shaky ground are hurting even more. Other people who are making use of the technology, I think they're going to survive, and they're going to adapt and survive. And I think even after COVID is eventually alleviated, some of these changes will remain. I mean, people, I think, will have become used to doing things remotely. And I think that is something which is going to continue to affect life and color the way that people do things for the indefinite future. And I think in immigration, though, honestly, it was overdue that people embraced and adopted technology to work with their clients remotely. It can just be very challenging with certain populations, but I think that you've got to do as much as you can. You've got to do as much as you can. So, I mean, I don't have, data on, I can't say like, oh, I've heard of 15 firms that went under or anything. I mean, I can't say anything like that, but I mean, some people are really hurting, smaller people or people that were trying to launch their firm. It's really difficult now. I mean, if you're just starting out to kind of launch your firm in the middle of a pandemic, I mean, that's a difficult thing to do. And other people who really, relied on doing things face to face with their clients are struggling, frankly, definitely. We've tried to help as much as we can by making the tools available. And when the pandemic hit, we even, gave people if they were, falling behind, we even gave them a month or two to catch up with their subscription and so forth. We've been liberal with allowing people to freeze their subscription if their business has dropped off a lot. So we've tried to do as much as we possibly can.
In the analytics, is there a way to see if like there's less case creation or anything like that? Or is that something you have general?
I don't think there's less. I don't think there's less case creation. I mean, it would be possible to get that data, but we'd have to consider that we're subscribing new people. We're subscribing people at a faster rate than ever right now, in spite of the pandemic, and that goes to like what I said. If you with USCIS accepting scanned signatures and with EOIR accepting digital signatures, you're able to at least operate in a partially remote or partially paperless manner. Hopefully, you can keep your operations as paperless as possible. But we have been subscribing more firms than ever, and that's in part because like I said, we are offering tools that people can use to cope with the situation, and in part because I think they're learning that the Docketwise site, the Docketwise platform, just offers a lot of advantages in terms of its user friendliness, and just there's a lot of things about us which make us distinctive, and a lot of people are just gradually learning about that. But we are, the subscriptions are up dramatically.
Yeah, so now this is probably one of my last questions, but is there any chance of DS160s and DS260s be able to work with your software so you fill those out, or do you have that? Or
we have the questionnaires, and it does produce. You can collect all the data for both of those on Docketwise, and we don't have a direct. It's not a direct link with the SEAC website that allows you to do the online filing. Instead, what you don't get anything printable either. You get a copy and paste screen where you can go line by line, and the data will be in the same order that it would be on the online version of the DS160 and DS260. So you can check the client's data line by line, which you would be doing anyway, and then click the little copy icon, copy it, and then move over to the other window of your computer and paste it into the SEAC. So you can go line by line and copy them. We built a tool to kind of copy the whole screen and transfer it over, but every time SEAC made any sort of adjustment on their side, it would break the code and make the thing not work. So, but we have both of those complete questionnaires.
I mean, as immigration lawyers know, just logging on to SEAC itself has that's issues. Checking what I do now is because when they send me messages, I can never open up the message to read it. So I have to go to Ask NBC, send them a message there saying, please, email me what you're telling me because the site doesn't work. And it's such a, they create this system to make streamline things, but it doesn't do it at all. I don't get logged out as much as I used to on SEAC, but that word capture has gotten better, but it still sucks. And it's just a hassle dealing with that form, but there's nothing you do. It's a third party, State Department website. They can change their code. They're probably never going to open it up for developers to be able to work with anyway. So, but that would have been a goal. If we just press one button and it goes in there and it's done, that would have been great. We've already done the I-130s and stuff and it's ready. Thank you so much, James, for coming on and give us the information. We'll definitely have you on and get your insight as things move forward and what you're seeing from your perspective. But if someone wanted to contact you, get to know Docketwise better, what's the best way, social media, whatever information you have to share to connect with you?
Sure. I mean, Docketwise, we have our Docketwise website is just docketwise.com. And then, you can also check out our Facebook page. You can check out our blog, which you can access from the website. You can reach us for general inquiries. Our email address is team, TEAM, @docketwise.com. You can reach me specifically, James, @docketwise.com. And I participate in a lot of the immigration lawyer Facebook groups, and feel free to direct any questions our way, and be very happy to speak to anybody that's interested in what we're doing here.
Awesome.
And thanks very much for having me.
You're welcome. One last question I should have started at the beginning with. What was the idea behind the name Docketwise? Where'd that come from?
Well, we thought about a lot of, the parent company, our parent company is called Borderwise, right? And so, that was just a name that we came up with, which, had the inference of borders, immigration, and wise sort of, because we are streamlining it, we're facilitating it, so wise with the suffix. And then we sort of wanted to play off of that. So we thought, well, what other wise can we come up with? So we thought of some other names that had wise at the end. And one of them we came up with was Docketwise. And we liked it because, it is a docket is, your caseload as an attorney or as a court that you have to handle. And wise, we are facilitating it, we're streamlining it. So it went together nicely. And we still have, I won't reveal them, but we still have some other wise, names that we might, roll out for use with other things. So yeah, that's the story.
You said you have a parent company. Are there any sister companies to Docketwise that provide resources, or is this just the initial step is Docketwise? There's more stuff in the future.
Well, the story was that it was a Borderwise, and it was that's our parent company. We have another site, which, we probably are going to fold. It's a site that exists separately. It's called Koala Form, and it's sort of a generalization of the types of form technology that we have on Docketwise. It enables you to populate other sorts of documents. In other words, you can start with basically any PDF, whether it's an editable form or a non-editable form, and you can upload it, and you can create a web questionnaire, and then create a link to that questionnaire and transmit that to your client to have them fill out the questionnaire online, and then populate the data into the PDF. So it's a generalization of the immigration forms technology that we have on Docketwise. And we have that as a freestanding site that's called Koala Form. We may, in the future, we're sort of deciding how far to take that. We may be folding some of that functionality into Docketwise. It's not sure at this point what we're going to do with it. And we had a questionnaire that enabled people for people who wanted to sort of prepare their own forms. We had an adaptation of one of the questionnaires that could be used publicly for people to sort of prepare their own naturalization or their own family petition. And that for a while that went under the name Borderwise as well. So a couple of different spins on Docketwise.
Awesome, James. I had one more question. I guess I'll ask it. How was it when the whole NA/none controversy erupted over asylum cases, and then you have to add it everywhere? How hard was it getting that technology in so that all the forms will include NA and none if required?
That's really easy. That's really easy for the engineering team. That's something that's easy for them. I mean, It's more difficult if people ask us to give them a choice, if they want to sort of have a choice between different forms or different parts of forms of whether it should be NA or none, or, if we have it as a global setting, which is what we have a global setting under your settings where you can choose to have NA populated into any blank field for any form that you create. That's quite easy for them to add that. It becomes trickier when you want to have a choice of what should be populated there. So we kept it at a global setting, and I think people are very happy with it. Yeah, USCIS can drive you crazy with some of these stuff.
When the fear happened, did you guys do it on your own when you started hearing about it, or did you get a lot of requests of people saying, can we get this NA situation like that?
Both. We heard about it. We were aware of it. I was aware of the issue. It was something that we had planned to do. And then when they started to emphasize it, then we immediately added it. Yeah.
I guess for people who don't know, they made it so for, I guess, asylum and UV is the cases. Every box has to have a NA and nothing should be blank. Then the fear arose, what if they're going to enforce that in other applications? Because USCIS doesn't necessarily tell us beforehand when it makes sudden changes like this. So I've taken out the practice to put NA and none and stuff throughout it and not leave empty boxes. But there's, it's funny, the adjudicator's field manual, which they stopped giving us access to, had written on it that if someone writes NA as a sign of fraud, they're probably trying to hide something, even though the instructions say to write NA. and then sometimes if you write none or NA and there was an answer, you just weren't aware of it. My worry is, will they come back and say that was misrepresentation when it was an honest mistake? Whereas if you left it blank, it might give a connotation, I forgot to fill it in.
Yeah, I think you have to keep handy. You have to keep handy the instructions or the regulations where they told you to do that in case they ever question it. Because they're sometimes they can even have, I guess, conflicting guidance. And we certainly know that they're not 100% consistent with everything they do, right? That's clear.
Hopefully it gets better, but that'll be a while for that happens. But James, thanks again for coming on the show. I really appreciate everything you do.
You're welcome, John. Very much appreciate it. Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. For previous episodes and more, please visit the podcast page of our website, immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. You can also visit the Toolbox YouTube and LinkedIn pages to catch the video versions of these podcasts, news updates, and a lot more. Immigration lawyers can also contact me to join the private Facebook page. The email is info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com.